Welcome to the Overflow Mindset Group. Hopefully you're experiencing overflow in your life. We're going to start by looking at the E-mini Dow futures and looking at the YM. Just get a feel for what's going on right now. So as you see, this is a daily chart. Again, our method of trading is to look at the 200-day moving average, which is the blue line. We consider price to be underwater or moving downward when it's in the water. And this is just a way of looking at the market, make it a little bit easier. And then we look at it as being above water if it comes out of the water, or above the 200-day moving average. We also have the 50-day moving average. Here it's color-coded red, one's going down, green, one's going up. But we use this also as a guide to understand which way the market is actually moving at any particular time. So right now we're looking at Dow futures. And the Dow is really getting close to a recovery, actually. So here's the recent all-time highs at the beginning of 2022. And here we are really close to that number at this particular point, and eventually moving up even closer to those all-time highs. We're looking at about 3,400 right now, 34,000, sorry, and looking at getting back to 37,000 to have that full recovery. We should see a little bit of a pullback and then a push up eventually. We're looking at the news events using the economic calendar that's available here in TradingView. We see that there's some British news that's coming out at 2 a.m. Some more news for America in the morning at around 8:30. So we can expect those things to have some impact on the way that the market moves. So definitely pay attention at those particular times. So let's go back and just take a look at the market. All right, we looked at the S&P 500. That came back, gave us that little dip that we were looking for. It touched right here and then sort of started to push up. So we are sort of following this particular path at this particular point. We might get a little bit of a pullback before that final push up, but that's the direction that we're expecting this to go in as it peeps above the 200-day moving average, or the watermark, and continues to move higher. Let's see, let's look at NASDAQ. NASDAQ here found the bottom pretty much right in this zone area here at the bottom, so it seems to be holding so far, so we have to watch and see what happens with that. Let's look at Ally. Ally gives you a little bit of at least I use Ally to give a little bit of a feel for what the overall market might be doing. Right now is recovering a bit because it's above the 50-day moving average, but it's still underwater, so this still has a little bit to go. But if this were to recover back to recent all-time highs, that would be 121%. It would have to move 121% to get back to recent all-time highs. BlackRock. So BlackRock, we're just looking forward to make this 30% move back to recent all-time highs. So we have to watch that and see what the movement looks like in order to get there. These are some ones that are just trending upward here. But let's jump right into AMC. So AMC had a little bounce there off of the $4 mark. So we talked about, last time we talked about these $4 to $2 and the basically zero mark, and how the recovery would be so much more if you come from those levels. If it does go down to $2, getting back to $4 would be 100% gain. And then you could just figure that that's going to be an exponential move as far as if you had invested at these particular levels. But again, we're still underwater for AMC, still moving down. It's still, just now peeping above the 50-day moving average. So we have to see if there's some price action above that to warrant, it going any higher than it is currently. But again, once you get down to these levels, the $4, the $3, $2 marks, those are going to be key levels going down into price. We have 8. Won't really talk about that. Roblox took a nice little push up, a gap up. Again, that seems to have found support at this daily key zone right here at the bottom here, and we'll see if it can hold. Square is again moving up, showing us a movement again from where we started from last time we spoke about this. To here would be 100% move in order to get back to this high here. That's not even recent all-time highs over here, which if it were to get back there, you're looking at about 300%, 360% gain. All right. Let's look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA is showing some strength here again. We seem to have bottomed out here with somewhat of a head and shoulders pattern, where this is a shoulder, this is the head, this is a shoulder here. But we've somewhat bottomed out there. It looks like a perfect sort of symmetry kind of move when you look at the line going across. But at any rate, it is moving up at this particular point out of the above the 200-day moving average, which is above the watermark. And so we'll have to see what kind of price action we get. We could see a bit of a pullback, maybe retesting some of these key zones before pushing higher. All right, that's the video. SOFI. So SOFI has really been playing around, looks like in the 420-ish area. Here where we found some new support. It was holding support here at about the $5 mark, but it did sort of dip down a bit. But now it is back above that mark. Again, it doesn't take much of a move to get quite a bit of a percentage. So this move will be about a 50% move just to get to the next daily key zone. So again, we would be looking at much higher, percentages if the move goes further up, back to all-time highs. So depending on how low the price goes, the percentages could be quite substantial. Looking at 300%, or potentially 500% or 1,000% basically. All right, let's take a look at Upstart. So Upstart. So with Upstart, and this is going to be quite interesting. So Upstart created two gaps. We talked about these. This gap here, in order to fill this gap, this would be about a 250% gain to fill the first gap. 250% gain. If it fills the second gap, that's a potential 1,000% gain. In order to fill the second gap, price would have to move 1,000%. In order to fill this gap down here, price would have to move 250%. Can it do it? Is it over for Upstart? Who knows? But right now it is just peeping up above the 50-day moving average. We have to see if we can get some price action above that, and will that push it further up, into the 200-day moving average at least, and then eventually to fill this particular gap here. So time and patience might tell whether or not it can actually fill this gap or not. But that you're looking at 250% gain. Apple. So with Apple, it's moving down. Again, since we're underwater, we're below the 50-day moving average. Right now we have a counter trend line to the downside, where if it breaks that counter trend line, we would expect price to continue down to at least that most recent low, and then maybe even lower. So right now it hasn't broken, this particular counter trend line, so we have to wait and see if this is a point where it's going to turn over and start moving up again. But we'll wait and see what the market actually does, and then make a choice or a decision what to do next. PayPal. So PayPal found that support, been holding the support pretty well, dipped a little bit below it, but it did push back up above it. Now it's above the 50-day moving average, but still underwater for PayPal. But we're looking at 60% just to get back to the daily key zone. Plus, we have two gaps up here that need to be filled in, quite substantial on the daily charted gaps. So the potential for this is quite substantial to recover. If it is to recover at all, we're looking at possibly 300% gain. Price would have to move 300% in order to get back to all-time highs. All right, AMD. So AMD looks like it's found some support here. We'll have to continue to watch this and see if it can trade above the 50-day moving average, and then eventually above the 200-day watermark. So we have to keep an eye on that. DraftKings. So DraftKings has been holding this support here. It looks like this support's around $11 roughly. So it's been holding that support for quite some time. It looks like back in, I believe that was June or so of, it looks like maybe a little bit earlier than June, but roughly June-ish time frame where we thought the bottom sort of was in. And that bottom has been holding so far for DraftKings. Looking for upward movement on DraftKings eventually here. 100 to 200% gains, all the way up to possibly 500% gains for the price to move back to all-time highs. GM. And GM right now, again, we're underwater. We're below the 50-day moving average at the very moment, but we are waiting to see, is that going to break down below this counter trend line, which means price would probably move down to at least this most recent low, or maybe even lower. But right now it hasn't broken that line, so right now price is moving up until it breaks this line. Ford Motor Company, very similar situation here, where we are underwater still. So what we look for is a counter trend line break. We'll include this little move here. But we look for a counter trend line break. If it breaks down below this level, we expect it to go back to at least here, which has been holding a strong support, or it could go lower at that point. But if it stays above this and trends for a little bit, then we can consider that there may be a trend to the upside at that point. Meta. So Meta, as you see, Meta filled this initial gap, filled it in pretty well. Now it's moving up beyond that gap, continuing on. It's above the 50-day moving average. It is a bit high here on the RSI reading, so we would expect somewhat of a pullback over some time, maybe a bounce back off of the moving average and then continue up. But the goal here would be to get back to this gap here and see if this gap will fill. So based on where we are currently, let's just take a look at where we are currently. To fill the next gap would be 100% gain. Roughly, it'd be over 100%, but you get the idea. It'd be 100% gain to fill that next gap, and that's on Meta platform. So that's pretty major stock there to make 100% gain. All right, Netflix. So Netflix, we were talking about filling the gap on Netflix. It has completed that fill on the initial gap. There's a gap above, which is here. So the expectation would be for price to make its way up to here and fill this gap as well. We're just now breaking above the 200-day moving average out of the water. We've sort of retested that and we're starting to move up. Same thing with the 50-day moving average starting to come up out of the water. So we're starting to look for counter trend line breaks to the upside at this point to see if we can get breaks going to the upside. All right. Going on to Amazon. Amazon right now is underwater. So we will look for a counter trend line break to the downside really for this until it shows us that it's going to be trading above this 50-day moving average for some time. But right now we haven't broken this trend line, so right now the trend is, the short-term trend is up until it sort of breaks down past this line. All right, NIO is moving down again. The trend line is down since it didn't break the 200-day moving average when it was up here. It didn't provide much of an entry anywhere else. So basically, we're looking for again moves to the downside on NIO until it proves otherwise. So we could draw a counter trend line somewhat like this. If it breaks, then we expect to go down equal lows or maybe lower at that particular point. Right, MULN. This is more of a YOLO play. It's sort of holding some support right in. If we were to create this as a zone, let's just draw another line. So we'll create this as a zone. You can sort of see that it's sort of playing in this zone of support. So we have to see what happens with that. It's only 30 cents. So all right, let's jump to Tesla. So Tesla, so this bottom is sort of holding here. The $100 level held. The low that was here in a daily key zone, that's the white line that's here, is holding. We had a low reading, so we started to move up here, and we would expect this move to continue to at least hit the moving average. If it hits the moving average and start moving down again, then that might be a bit of an issue. If it can make it to this key zone here, then that could be set up for a reset. Because then it would potentially be above the 50-day moving average and maybe be able to ride that out of the water. But for now, we are in an uptrend for this. You know, a short-term uptrend. Long-term is actually down. But short-term, you can say that's sort of an uptrend that is in. All right. I don't think we want to talk about Rivian. Let's go to Halliburton. Yeah, so Halliburton has been moving on again. Here's an example of trend line break, and it just continues to go. You know, match these highs here, and then just continue to go. So you know, tap on these highs here. So Halliburton has been doing really well. Looks like it's back to pretty much all-time highs. All right. And Caterpillar looks similar. It's pushed above where it was earlier and continues to move. All right, Google is moving downward again with this because we really haven't sustained any movement above the 50-day moving average. We continue to expect this to go down unless it can break. If we were to draw a counter trend line to catch that, you know, we just sort of draw it maybe like this and wait and see what happens. If it starts trading above the 50-day moving average, we'll have to continue to watch it. Home Depot, same thing here, starting to pop out of the water here above the 50-day moving average, above the 200-day moving average, of course, and then we're looking for, in order to get back to all-time highs, we would have to move 34% on Home Depot. All right. Looking at some of the Bitcoin or blockchain sort of companies, you have HUT here. Is moving up at this particular point. It has taken a while to do this, but it is moving up. It looks like it hit the 50% mark, move from the previous mark that we made. Otherwise, it could continue up 100% here. Right now, this reading is relatively high, so we expect somewhat of a pullback, but ultimately we're looking for upward movement over the long term. Mara looks very similar. Coinbase looks pretty similar as well, based on where we are currently. RIOT, very similar as well. Hive, again, very similar. It's already gone 50%. Potentially could go to that 100% move. Again, patience is a big part of trading or swing trading or investing. It's really just having the patience. As long as you own your position, you have a good chance, you know, of whatever you think is going to happen playing out, as long as you have time and you own your position. GBTC, very similar, 50% move. And looking at some of these other holdings as well. So, let's look at oil companies. Let's say CVX, Chevron. Let's continue to move up out of the water, positive. Like Stone Minerals, bouncing off of the 200-day moving average here, pushing up above the 50-day moving average. It's breaking out of a trend line, so we expect upward movement, maybe up to this level. All right. So other companies, let's see, BP continue to move up, easy move. Back here we had a 20% move. It did continue to dip, but now we're even higher than that point. This has moved 25%. That's ExxonMobil. OVV moved 50% back here. Sort of been trapped in that space for now, you know, but there've been a lot of trendline breaks, but not enough momentum to the upside yet. Oxy, very clear movement to the upside on these trendline breaks. We have a trendline break here, we continue on. MRO, this is moved 50% earlier, moved 100%. You know, it's continuing to move up. If you look at some of the other companies like FuelCell is starting to move up a bit. Plug, starting to move up into this. We're expecting this 100% move ultimately to get back to those previous high marks. Look at that run is on the run. 100% get back to these levels. Let's go to charge point. It's not really moving ahead of downturn for some time. Stayed below the watermark for a while now. Just now starting to show signs of moving above the 50-day moving average, but it is a bit high on RSI reading, so we'll have to wait and see on that one. All right, clean energy. Let's look at EVGO. EVGO, yeah, it's just hovering right there on the 50-day moving average. We'll have to see if that does continue to push up or not. All right. And we'll kind of conclude there. We had a pretty good look around the market at that point. Again, patience is very important. Once you own your position and you feel good about where you plant your seeds, you can watch that harvest as price goes up, above those prices, that sort of thing, and on to the future. So, overflow.